You're listening to The Deep Dive with Mike and Mandy.
All right, let's get into it. Today we're tackling a tough one: military radicalization and domestic terrorism.
Yeah.
And those New Year's Eve attacks.
Right.
That's just the start. We're going to go deepy. I think you and I both want to get to the bottom of why veterans are showing up more and more in these extremist crimes.
Absolutely. It's a disturbing trend. Those New Year's Eve attacks really bring it home.
For sure.
You have one in New Orleans. Shamsuddin Jabbar,
Right.
former Army, drove a truck right through Bourbon Street.
Killed 15 people.
Yeah. And they found an ISIS flag in the vehicle.
Then you have the other attack.
Yeah. Matthew Allen Livelsberger
Also former Army.
detonated a bomb in his Cybertruck.
Outside a Trump hotel.
Yeah. And he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
It's like two sides of the same coin, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got clear jihadist motives in one.
And the other, we're left totally in the dark.
Complete mystery.
Honestly, the fact that we're guessing about Livelsberger's motives is almost scarier.
I think you're right.
But the thing that's really shocking is the sheer number of veterans tied to these extremist crimes. Over 480 between 2017 and 2023.
That's according to an Associated Press investigation.
I gotta say, I was kind of expecting a much stronger connection to jihadism,
Yeah, that's a common thought.
given all the high-profile cases we've seen in the past.
But the data actually tells a different story. 80% of these cases are linked to right-wing, anti-government, or white supremacist ideologies.
Wow, so we're not talking about a one-sided problem here.
Not at all.
So it's more widespread than a lot of people realize.
Definitely.
But why the military? What makes it such a breeding ground for this kind of radicalization?
Well, I think you have to look at the unique combination of factors.
Okay.
Military training instills discipline, tactical skills,
Right.
expertise in weapons and explosives.
So these aren't just your average disgruntled people.
Exactly.
These folks have the knowledge to do some serious damage.
And then you layer on the vulnerabilities that many veterans face. The psychological impact of deployments,
Iraq, Afghanistan,
the staggering rates of PTSD,
Yeah.
the struggles with homelessness,
chronic illnesses.
even things like exposure to burn pits.
Right.
All of these create a perfect storm for desperation and disillusionment.
And both Jabbar and Livelsberger are guys from the New Year's attacks. They were both Afghanistan vets.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, right? Could their time over there have been a trigger?
It's certainly a question worth asking.
Yeah.
But even beyond specific deployments, the transition back to civilian life,
Right.
it can be incredibly difficult for a lot of veterans,
Yeah.
leaving them vulnerable to extremist groups that promise a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose.
We're looking for community, and these groups exploit that need.
Precisely. Untreated mental health issues combined with isolation.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is.
Yeah.
These extremist groups,
Yeah.
they start to look appealing with their promises of camaraderie, their simple solutions,
They prey on these feelings of being lost.
offering a really dangerous substitute for the structure and community a lot of veterans crave.
It's heartbreaking that the very people who served our country end up feeling so alienated
I agree.
that they turn to these harmful ideologies.
Yeah,
And sometimes it feels like the system fails them.
it does.
You have a case like Robert Card, the Army reservist who killed 18 people in Maine.
Tragic case.
Weren't there red flags about him?
There were.
Things that were missed.
The Card case is a perfect example of how these systemic failures can lead to tragedy.
It's like he slipped through the cracks despite all the warning signs.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't an isolated incident.
So we're failing to identify and address these vulnerabilities.
And until we do, I'm afraid we're going to keep seeing these tragedies unfold.
But how much can the military really do? You can't keep tabs on every soldier's every thought.
Right.
Didn't a Pentagon spokesperson say something like, "We can't be the thought police"?
They did?
It's a slippery slope, right? When you start
Uh,
talking about monitoring people's beliefs.
You're talking about balancing security with individual liberty. It's a tough one.
Where's the line?
It's not an easy question to answer.
And how do you even create a culture where people feel comfortable seeking help
Right?
without worrying about what it'll mean for their career?
That's the million-dollar question.
It's a minefield.
It is. But the stakes are incredibly high.
Lives are on the line.
Absolutely. We need to prevent these tragedies.
It's not just about protecting freedom.
It's about saving lives.
So what can we actually do? What are the concrete steps to tackle this?
Well, I think it's going to take a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
Enhanced screening processes,
Like what?
more thorough background checks,
Okay.
better psychological evaluations, maybe even ongoing assessments throughout a soldier's career.
Not just when they enlist.
Not just the beginning. We need to be identifying these risk factors early.
But how do you do that without raising all sorts of privacy concerns? Especially when you're talking about mental health.
It's a delicate balance, no doubt about it.
It feels like we're walking a tightrope.
We are, but it's a conversation we have to have.
Because the consequences of doing nothing are just too awful to think about.
I agree. The potential for tragedy is just too great. We were talking about this connection between military radicalization and the bigger picture of domestic terrorism.
Right. It's a lot to wrap your head around. And I'm still thinking about how we find that balance, between keeping people safe and protecting their freedom.
It's tricky.
It really is. You talked about enhanced screening processes, but how do you make them better without going too far?
Well, it's not about, spying on everyone's thoughts.
Right. Not Big Brother.
Right. It's more about recognizing patterns. Things that might point to trouble down the line, like a checkup, but for radicalization.
So you're talking about psychological evaluations.
Yeah, more advanced ones, to try and spot people who might be vulnerable.
And not just when they sign up, right?
Yeah, exactly. People change. Experiences change them. What might not be a red flag today could be one down the road.
I see what you mean. But wouldn't that discourage some people from enlisting in the first place?
It's possible. But think about it this way. Early intervention could actually help keep good people in the military.
How so?
Well, if we can identify those who are struggling, whether it's mental health or they're being pulled in by extremist groups, we can get them the support they need.
So they can thrive.
Exactly. Both in the military and when they transition back to civilian life.
That makes sense. It all comes down to destigmatizing mental health.
Yeah, making it clear that seeking help isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength.
Taking care of yourself.
Right. And it has to be available throughout a service member's entire career.
Not just when they're already in crisis mode.
Exactly. Maybe something like mandatory mental health checkups could help with that.
Like an annual physical.
Something like that. Treat mental health with the same level of importance as we treat physical health.
But let's be honest, the military is already super high stress.
It is.
Would adding mandatory checkups just make that worse?
Well, it's all about how it's done.
Yeah.
If people are afraid of getting in trouble or being judged, it's not going to work.
You're right. It's about more than just a policy. It's got to be a culture shift.
Yeah. The whole culture surrounding mental health needs to change.
And leadership has to set the tone.
Leaders need to show that they take their own mental health seriously.
And encourage others to do the same.
Right. Create an environment where asking for help is encouraged, not punished.
Okay, but what about the online world? We've talked about how these extremist groups use the internet to recruit. How do you fight that without stepping on people's free speech or privacy?
That's a really tough one. There are no easy answers. But maybe we can learn from how we deal with other online threats, like child exploitation or cyberbullying.
How so?
Well, we identify the platforms and networks that are being used and try to shut them down.
So you target the spaces where this stuff is happening?
Exactly. But it's like a game of whack-a-mole.
You shut one down, another pops up?
Yeah, it's a constant battle. But we can't just give up. Right? We've got to come up with ways to push back against the propaganda.
So you're talking about counter-messaging.
Something like that. Public service announcements, campaigns that challenge these dangerous ideologies.
Yeah.
Offer a message of hope.
But those can be so cheesy, How do you get through to the people who are really at risk?
You have to understand why people are drawn to these groups in the first place. It's not just about the ideology.
It's about their needs not being met.
Exactly. So we need to address those underlying vulnerabilities. And that brings us back to supporting veterans as they transition out of the military.
Okay, let's talk about that. What kind of programs actually work?
We need to create clear paths for veterans to build good lives after service.
Okay, so things like job training.
Absolutely. Educational opportunities.
Helping them find housing.
All of that. And support navigating the VA.
Right. But also mental health services that really get what they're going through.
Exactly. Programs that understand the trauma of war and the challenges of coming home.
So more than just generic therapy.
Right. Something that's tailored to their unique experiences.
Programs that are accessible to everyone.
Especially veterans in rural areas. Or those who might not feel comfortable going the traditional route.
So meeting them where they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about official programs.
What else is there?
Community. Families, friends, neighbors.
They're often the first ones to see when someone is struggling.
Exactly. How do we give them the tools to do something?
To intervene.
Right. We need to teach people about the warning signs of radicalization.
And how to actually help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it's connecting someone with mental health services.
Or alerting law enforcement.
Sometimes it's just being there to listen.
Offering support without judgment.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of both vigilance and compassion.
So we're all responsible for looking out for each other.
In a way, yes.
We need a culture where people feel empowered to speak up.
And where those who need help feel safe asking for it.
Not judged or pushed away.
Exactly. It's a big challenge, but I think it's one we have to face head on.
It seems like a lot of this comes back to the idea of community. If people feel connected, supported,
Yeah.
they're less likely to fall prey to these extremist groups that offer a false sense of belonging.
That's a really important point.
We all need to feel like we belong somewhere.
Absolutely. We need communities where everyone feels valued,
Respected.
supported, no matter who they are or what they believe.
It's a big ask, but it feels essential.
I think it is.
But how do we even know if we're making progress? How do we measure success?
That's a good question. And honestly, it's something that researchers and policymakers are still figuring out.
So what should we be looking at?
Well, it's not enough to just track the number of extremist incidents.
Right, that's only part of the picture.
We need to look at things like how many veterans are using mental health services,
Okay.
how effective these reintegration programs are, even things like levels of trust and social cohesion in society as a whole.
So it's not just about preventing violence.
It's about creating a society where extremism can't take hold,
building resilience.
fostering hope.
We've got a long way to go, don't we?
We do, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
A little unsettling at times, but it's clear we can't just sweep this under the rug.
Absolutely not. This is something we have to talk about. Man, we've covered so much ground here. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
I keep thinking about how this issue with military radicalization, it's kind of like a symptom of bigger problems in society, right?
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it.
It's like all the things that divide us as a country.
Yeah.
The political stuff, the economic anxieties.
Sense and isolation.
It all gets magnified in the military. Absolutely. It's like the military is this microcosm of society as a whole.
So maybe by trying to solve this problem within the military, we can actually learn something about how to deal with these same issues in the wider world.
I think you're right. It's like holding up a mirror, forcing us to confront some really uncomfortable truths.
About what leads people to extremism.
Exactly.
And it's not just going to be a military solution, right? It's going to take all of us.
It will. It's going to take some honest conversations.
Even when they're tough.
Even when they're painful. We have to talk about things like mental health stigma.
Right.
The way disinformation spreads online.
And what makes people vulnerable to these extremist ideas.
It's about understanding the whole picture.
But it's so easy for these conversations to devolve into finger pointing.
It is.
How do we avoid that? How do we actually find solutions?
I think it starts with nuance.
Okay.
Take the role of algorithms, for example.
Online.
Yeah. The algorithms that are supposed to keep us engaged, right? They can actually create these echo chambers.
Where you only see stuff that reinforces your existing beliefs.
Exactly. And that can push people down a very dangerous path.
Towards extremism.
Right.
Right.
So we need to understand how these technologies are being used against us.
And then find ways to mitigate the risks.
Exactly.
So it's not just about personal responsibility, it's also about recognizing how technology plays a role.
It absolutely does.
And maybe holding these tech companies accountable for how their platforms are being used.
I agree. It's about having a system of checks and balances.
We need more transparency about how these algorithms actually work.
And we need stronger regulations to prevent the spread of this harmful content.
But how do you regulate without censoring? That's a tough one.
It is. It's a balancing act, for sure. We need to protect free speech,
Right.
but also prevent harm.
Maybe we can learn from other countries that have dealt with this.
That's a good point.
See what worked for them.
And what didn't?
But even with all that, it feels like we also need to focus on teaching people how to think critically.
Especially young people.
Yeah, they're the ones who are most susceptible to online manipulation.
Their media literacy is so crucial in this day and age.
We need to equip people with the tools to identify bias
Evaluate their sources.
and resist the pull of these extremist narratives.
Exactly.
So it's about empowering people to be critical thinkers, not just passive consumers of whatever's thrown at them.
That's a great way to put it.
Building a society that's resistant to extremism.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's a complex issue, no doubt about it.
It is.
But we can't afford to look away.
We can't. And the good news is there are people out there doing incredible work.
What kind of work?
Organizations that are providing mental health support to veterans.
Yeah.
Groups that are fighting online extremism.
Okay.
People who are promoting dialogue and understanding between different faiths.
So it's not hopeless.
It's not. There are people out there making a difference.
And we can help.
We can.
But what can one person actually do? It feels so big.
Well, start by educating yourself.
Okay.
Learn about the warning signs.
Of radicalization?
Yes. The tactics that these groups use.
Okay.
Find out what resources are available to help.
For people who might be at risk.
Exactly. Talk to your friends and family about this.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Even if it's hard. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations.
And support the organizations that are doing good work.
The ones that are fighting extremism and promoting peace.
So it comes down to awareness, education, and action.
I think so.
We can't just pretend this isn't happening.
We can't. Silence is complicity.
We have to speak up.
We do. We have to oppose extremism in all its forms.
And support those who are working to build a better world.
A more just and equitable world.
Well, this has been a journey.
It has.
A deep dive into a really tough topic.
A necessary one, though.
Absolutely. We've seen the dark side of military radicalization.
The systemic failures that contribute to it.
And the need for a multi-pronged approach to tackle it.
We've also seen how this issue reflects the challenges we face as a society.
And how understanding those challenges can help us fight extremism in all its forms.
Absolutely.
So, to you, our listener, we leave you with this thought. How can you contribute to building a more resilient, more inclusive society?
A society that's resistant to the pull of extremism.
Where everyone feels like they belong.
Change starts with each of us.
By being informed, by getting involved, by caring for each other.
We can create a world where extremism has no place.
A world where everyone has the opportunity to find purpose and meaning.
That's the world we should all be striving for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Okay, so you know how everyone always has that creepy feeling that maybe their phone is listening to them,
Totally.
and then you're talking about something random.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
Might be an ad.
there's an ad for it, right?
Exactly.
So we are diving deep today into some recent news about Apple. And they had to settle a lawsuit that claimed that Siri was actually recording conversations without people knowing.
Wow.
And so we've got two articles from Money Watch.
Okay.
They're both dated January 3, 2025.
Gotcha.
So these articles are saying that back in 2019, this law firm filed a class action lawsuit against Apple after a Guardian article had alleged that Siri was basically just eavesdropping
Oh, wow.
on everybody.
So in this case, it's Apple.
Yeah.
And Apple, they've really built their reputation on protecting privacy.
Totally. It's almost ironic.
Yeah.
So they're explaining that back in 2019,
Yeah.
a law firm
Right.
filed that lawsuit, and that was after the Guardian article that said Siri was eavesdropping. And the lawsuit says that it all started back on September 17, 2014, after a software update. And that software update was actually supposed to make it so Siri would only activate when you said, "Hey, Siri."
Right.
But Siri was recording even when it wasn't activated.
So you're saying if you weren't trying to use Siri, it could still be recording you.
That's what they're saying.
Oh, that's unsettling.
I know.
And it gets more complicated.
Oh, no.
The lawsuit also claims that Apple was sharing some of these recordings with advertisers
What?
to target ads.
Oh, my God.
All those privacy policies, we agree to without reading them.
Yep.
That's why they matter.
I know.
Wow.
So that's kind of a gut punch, especially because Apple is always privacy is a fundamental human right.
Right. Their whole campaign.
Yeah, their whole campaign.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did Apple admit to anything?
Well, they agreed to a $95 million settlement,
Oh, yeah.
but it still needs a judge's approval. And the settlement covers U.S. consumers who owned a Siri-enabled device
Okay.
between September 17, 2014 and the end of 2024.
So that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
So how much could those people get?
The articles say a possible payout of up to $20 per device.
Oh, wow.
But the final amount is going to depend on how many people file claims
Okay.
and legal fees.
Right, of course.
It's estimated that only about 3% to 5% of eligible people will actually file.
That's such a small percentage.
It is a really small percentage.
And what about the legal fees?
The lawyers are asking for almost $30 million.
Oh my goodness.
There's a court hearing coming up February 14th to review all this.
So Apple is paying out this money.
Yeah.
But they're not admitting to anything.
They're not.
Right.
They say they would have been cleared in court.
Right.
But they haven't publicly given a reason for settling.
But companies don't usually pay out millions of dollars.
Oh, no.
For no reason.
Right. There has to be a reason.
So what do you think it is? Well, going to trial is expensive, time-consuming, and it can damage a company's reputation.
Even if they win.
Even if they win.
Yeah.
It's true.
That makes sense.
But $95 million for a company like Apple,
it's like nothing.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Since 2014, their profits have been over $700 billion.
Wow.
And right now...
That's insane.
I know.
And right now, their market value is around $3.7 trillion.
Yeah.
So this settlement is really just damage control.
It could be.
Yeah.
It definitely raises some questions about their commitment to privacy.
Right.
Especially when it seems to clash with their business practices.
For sure. And this isn't the kind of publicity that any company wants.
Right. Especially one that prides itself on privacy.
Especially Apple.
Yeah.
So if Siri was allegedly listening in, what about all of our other devices?
Exactly.
Our smartphones, our smart speakers.
Are we ever truly alone anymore?
I don't know.
That's the question, isn't it?
It is a very good question. It's not just about Apple either.
Oh.
There's a similar case going on right now.
Really?
Involving Google and their Android virtual assistant.
Oh, wow.
So this seems like a wider issue.
Yeah.
That's only going to get more complex.
As technology keeps advancing.
As technology keeps advancing.
Yeah. So if someone is like freaking out after hearing all this about Siri, what can they actually do?
Well, you can disable Siri.
Okay.
It's really easy.
Right.
One of the articles actually lays it out step by step.
Okay.
You go to settings. Then Siri in search.
Okay.
And toggle off listen for Hey Siri.
Okay.
And press the side button for Siri. And in a pop-up window that appears, tap turn off Siri.
So if we're disabling all these features, are we sacrificing convenience for privacy?
Yeah. Where do we draw the line?
Where do we draw the line?
Good question. I mean, that's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're so used to these always-on features, but like, what are we giving up?
Yeah. It does feel like a losing battle sometimes. Like the technology moves so fast that it's hard to keep up with like all the ways that our data is being collected and used.
Right. But like just knowing about it is a good first step.
Right.
Like even if you don't understand all of it, just knowing that like all of these devices, they're collecting data.
Yeah. And even like things that seem harmless.
Totally.
Like all the personality quizzes that everyone likes to share on social media.
Exactly.
They're fun.
They are fun.
But then it's like, wait a minute, where is all that going?
Where is it going and how is it being used? It's all like part of this big ecosystem of data collection and targeted advertising.
Ugh, it's so annoying.
But back to like those practical steps.
Yeah.
You can actually do more than just disable Siri.
Oh, really?
Did you know that you can actually control which apps can use your iPhone's microphone?
Wait, you can do that like individually?
You can.
I had no idea how to.
Okay, so you go to settings, you select the app,
okay,
and then you just toggle off microphone access.
Okay, so it seems like a small thing.
Yeah.
But that actually gives you a lot more control.
So much more control.
Yeah.
You have the power.
I love that.
Yes.
So we've talked about what individuals can do, but shouldn't the companies that are developing these technologies bear some responsibility for like protecting privacy?
100%. Like it's up to them to build in these protections from the ground up.
Yeah.
Not just like adding a privacy policy.
As an afterthought.
As an afterthought, exactly.
Yeah. This might be a rabbit hole, but how does all this voice recognition technology even work?
Oh, it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing.
So they're training these systems on huge amounts of data.
Massive.
Including recordings of human speech.
Exactly.
To be able to recognize patterns and understand language.
Yes. And like all the nuances of language.
So our voices are literally being used to train these systems.
It's true.
Wow.
That's why sometimes when you're using an app, they'll ask you if they can use your voice recordings to improve their voice recognition.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
But this also really highlights like how important it is.
So important.
To have ethical guidelines
Yes.
and regulations
Yeah.
in place for all this stuff.
Yeah, because what if these systems are being trained on our voices
Right.
without our consent?
Without us knowing.
Yeah, that's a whole other level.
That's scary.
And that's why cases like this Apple settlement are so important.
Yeah.
They force us to like deal with this
Mhm.
and demand better transparency
Yeah.
from these companies that we're trusting with our data.
So where do we go from here?
That's the question.
What's the big takeaway?
I think the key is like finding that balance
Yeah.
between enjoying all the cool new technology
Yeah.
and protecting our privacy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not about being afraid of technology,
Right.
but being informed
Yeah.
and making conscious choices.
I like that. So it's like we want all the cool new tech, but we also want to have our privacy.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you can't really have both.
Yeah.
But just like knowing that
Yeah.
that tension exists,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good first step.
Right.
We can't just like accept every new gadget
Right.
or app or whatever
Yeah.
without thinking about what we're giving up.
Right. And a lot of the time we're just clicking agree,
Totally.
but we don't even know what we're agreeing to.
It's true. Like those terms of service
Mhm.
and those privacy policies,
Yeah.
they're so long and complicated.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Right.
You don't have to understand every single little detail.
Right.
Just focus on the main points.
Okay.
Like what data are they collecting?
Yeah.
How are they using it?
Mhm.
Who are they sharing it with?
Right.
And if it feels weird or you're just not comfortable with it,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to just say no.
Yeah. Just don't use it.
Don't use it.
You can adjust your settings.
Exactly.
Like you actually have more control than you think.
You do.
Mm.
It's about taking back that power.
Yeah.
And it's not just about protecting yourself.
Right.
It's about setting an example
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah. Like the choices we make now,
Uh-huh.
they affect everyone.
Totally.
So if there's one thing that you want our listeners to take away from all of this,
Okay.
what would it be?
Stay curious.
Okay.
Stay informed.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
I love that.
The more we know about how these technologies work,
Yeah.
the better choices we can make about our privacy.
Great advice. And of course, for our listener who wants to dive in even deeper, we've got links to those Money Watch articles in the show notes.
Awesome.
We've also got the instructions for how to disable Siri if that's something that you want to do.
Very important.
So that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
It was fun.
It was so fun. I always learn so much from you.
Me too.
So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.
All right, so have you gotten one of those texts lately?
Which ones?
You know, about a package?
Oh, yeah. All the time?
It seems like every other day.
Pretty much.
There's like a problem with the delivery, or I need to like reschedule.
Mm-hmm.
And half the time, I can't even remember ordering anything.
Right.
Turns out I'm not alone. It's not just me and my terrible memory.
No, not at all.
There's this huge surge in scams going around, and they all use like the USPS name,
Oh, wow.
and they're getting really good at it too.
Yeah.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into how these scams actually work,
Okay.
and more importantly, how to avoid them.
Sounds good.
We're looking at this article. It's called Deep Dive: USPS Scams Going Viral.
Catchy title.
It really is, and it's got some really interesting stuff in here.
Cool.
So I think what really gets me is it's not just like they're using, our love of online shopping.
Yeah.
It's that they're using the fact that we actually trust the Postal Service.
Oh,
Right. It's like a government institution. It's been around, like forever?
forever.
And we all kind of depend on it.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
So we're a lot more likely to just believe a message if it says it's from them,
Right.
even if something seems kind of like fishy.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, who hasn't had to like track down a package?
Oh, all the time.
Or like, worry about where it is. So it just kind of puts you in this vulnerable spot,
Oh, yeah.
especially when these scammers are using some really convincing tactics.
What have you seen?
Well, this article mentions a bunch of stuff,
Okay.
like fake texts, fake emails, even like physical notices that they designed to look like they're really from USPS.
Wow. So like they put it in your mailbox?
Yeah, like in your mailbox or like on your door or something.
Wow. That's bold.
Yeah, and they all have this one thing in common.
What's that?
They try to make it seem super urgent.
Uh-huh.
Like they might say your package is stuck in customs,
Uh-huh.
or like there's a problem with your address,
Oh, yeah.
or you have to reschedule delivery like right now. It's all designed to just kind of make you panic,
Yeah. So you don't think straight.
Yeah, exactly. And just click on stuff without really thinking about it.
Oh, I see where this is going. And that's where the whole, what is it, phishing thing comes in.
Exactly.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not be familiar,
Yeah, good point.
phishing is basically, it's like a sneaky way to steal your information.
Right.
These messages, they'll have a link in them, and it looks like it goes to the USPS website,
Uh-huh.
but it doesn't.
Oh, got it.
It actually takes you to a fake site.
Gotcha.
It's totally controlled by the scammers, of course. And once you type in your login stuff, or your credit card info, well, you can probably guess what happens next.
Oh, no. Not good. So it's not just about maybe losing a package, right?
Right.
It's about giving them like the keys to your entire online life.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yikes. The article talks about identity theft,
Yeah, that's a big one.
but I imagine there's like a whole domino effect that can happen.
Oh, definitely.
Like what else can go wrong?
Well, think about it.
Right.
Your USPS account, right? It might be linked to your email.
Ah.
And your email is probably linked to all sorts of things.
Right.
Your bank accounts, social media, who knows what else.
Jeez.
It can really unravel pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You could be looking at financial losses, damage to your credit score, even legal problems.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So like this is serious stuff.
Yeah, it's not something to take lightly.
So knowing all of this,
Yeah.
how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, good question.
We can't just like stop using the mail altogether.
No, of course not. The key here is vigilance. You just got to be really careful.
Okay.
So like whenever you get one of those notifications, you know about a delivery.
Yeah.
Even if it looks totally legit, just take a second, double check everything.
Okay.
The most important thing is don't click on any links in the message.
Got it.
Go directly to the USPS website
Okay.
or use their app. That's a good one.
Makes sense.
That way you can track your package, see if everything matches up.
Right.
And if anything seems off, like even a little bit,
Yeah.
report it to USPS right away.
Report it. Got it. So I guess that just means like the golden rule here is
What's that?
use the official USPS website or app for all your tracking.
Everything.
No clicking random links?
Nope. No matter how tempting it seems.
Got it.
It might feel like, an extra step. But honestly, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's a small price to pay for peace of mind,
That's true.
These scams, they really prey on like our busy lives and our tendency to try and take shortcuts,
For sure.
So just by taking a moment, pausing, verifying everything, you can really reduce your risk.
Like significantly.
Exactly.
So basically treat all those delivery notifications
How should we treat them?
like that suspicious email from a Nigerian prince.
Oh, yeah, those.
The one that promises you millions of dollars.
Right.
Proceed with extreme caution.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Look, the bottom line is knowledge is power.
Love that.
You know these scams now, you know how they work, and that puts you ahead of the game.
So true. So next time you get that text,
The urgent delivery issue one.
yeah, urgent delivery issue. Just remember this conversation.
Take your time.
Take a deep breath.
Double check everything.
Double check. And stay safe out there.
Stay safe.
All right, so welcome to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today, we're diving into a new type of scam that's, really making the rounds online. They're calling it no money. And this one uses AI deepfakes to trick people, especially on social media.
Right.
And it's spreading like super fast, like incredibly fast.
Yeah.
In fact, it's up like 335% in just the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's really taken off.
So this is according to Kim Commando's recent article. It's called The Crypto Investment Scam. That's all over social media. So, buckle up because we're about to, break down how this scam works,
Right.
what the tech is behind it,
Yeah.
and most importantly, how to spot it. So,
Yeah, and what's really alarming is that it really uses like something we're all familiar with, right? Like social media,
right.
to target people with like these fake endorsements from like super influential figures.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see like how that would be effective. Like, can you walk us through like how the scam actually plays out? Like, how does it actually work?
Sure. So like imagine, right? You're, scrolling through your feed and you come across this video of like Elon Musk.
Okay.
And he's like talking about this new cryptocurrency that's like guaranteed to make you, tons of money.
Yeah.
Like super rich. But the video, right, it looks and sounds just like him, but it's actually a deep fake that's been, created using AI.
Wow.
Yeah. And like These videos are often shared on accounts that like look totally legitimate, you know, with like tons of followers and like really professional looking graphics, which, you know, makes it seem even more convincing.
So it's not just like some rando posting it. It's like,
No.
these are accounts that like already have credibility.
Exactly.
So like, okay, so I click on the link in the video thinking, you know, I'm going to learn more about this like amazing investment opportunity. Then what?
Yeah, so that's when they really like reel you in, right? With a website, and it like looks like a legitimate like investment platform, you know? And you might even be like contacted by someone posing as like an investment manager, offering you like personalized advice and support, right? But of course, like it's all a trick to get you to like hand over your money, right? So the website's fake. The investment manager is a scammer.
Right.
And those guaranteed returns are nothing but like empty promises.
So it's not just about like the deepfakes themselves, right?
Right.
It's the whole like ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the fake websites, fake personas. Yeah. It's like the whole 9 yards.
The whole thing, yeah. And like what's even more insidious, I think, is that they often use like these malicious ads and phishing emails to spread these scams even further.
Okay, so can you break those down a little bit?
Sure.
Like, what exactly are malicious ads? And what are phishing emails? And how do they, like, fit into this whole no money scheme?
Right. So malicious ads are basically, like, ads that look totally legitimate.
Okay.
But they actually contain, like, harmful software or link to, you know, dangerous websites. Like, for example, right, you might see an ad for that same like fake crypto investment platform while you're like browsing a legitimate website, you know, and you click on it thinking it's like a real ad and boom, you're on the scammer's website. Right. One step closer to becoming a victim.
Gotcha. Okay. And phishing emails.
Right. So phishing emails are emails designed to like trick you into revealing like personal information like your bank account details or your passwords. So in the context of this scam, you might receive an email that like looks like it's from, you know, a legitimate financial institution or even like a government agency warning you about the Nomani scam, and urging you to like verify your information to protect yourself.
So wow, that's really like devious.
It is.
So they're using these deep fakes to like get people's attention and then they're hitting them with these other tactics to actually like steal their information and their money.
Exactly. And because deep fakes are becoming like increasingly sophisticated, it can be really difficult to tell, you know, what's real and what's fake.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about how the scam works and like how these scammers are using deep fakes, malicious ads and phishing emails to their advantage. But like, what about the technology behind the deepfakes themselves? Like, how are they able to create these like incredibly realistic videos that can like fool even the most like tech savvy people? Right.
It's all thanks to like the advancements in artificial intelligence, right? So with the vast amount of video content that's available online, these scammers can easily feed an AI system with like hours of footage of someone like Elon Musk, right? And then the AI learns like his mannerisms, his voice, his facial expressions, and can then like create a video of him saying or doing just about anything.
Okay, so they don't need like a Hollywood studio or a team of like special effects artists to create these deep fakes anymore. It's just like a computer and some readily available software.
That's it.
Wow.
And the scary part is that this software is becoming like more affordable and user-friendly all the time. Which means, you know, more and more people have access to this technology.
That raises like some interesting questions, I think, about like the potential implications of this technology beyond just like scams, right? But I think we'll dive into that, you know, a bit later.
Yeah, we'll definitely be exploring like the broader kind of societal impact of deepfakes. But for now, let's focus on how you can like protect yourself from falling victim to these scams.
Yeah, that's definitely what like I'm most interested in. Like, what are some of the red flags? Like, what should we be looking for?
Well, one of the first things you should look for is anything that seems like off about the video itself. Like, you know, sometimes deepfakes can have like a slightly blurry or low resolution look, especially like around the face, you know, and that's because the AI is still, you know, working to smooth out those edges.
So even if the video quality isn't like terrible, that slight blurriness could be like a warning sign.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what else should we be like paying attention to?
Pay close attention to the way the person's like moving and talking.
Okay.
Like deepfakes often have like these unnatural movements, like
man.
jerky head turns or like robotic gestures.
Yeah. I've definitely seen like some of those like uncanny valley deep fakes,
Right.
floating around online. And it's
Yeah.
like amazing how realistic they can be.
Right.
But like something about them just feels like a little off.
Yeah, exactly. And the audio can be like a telltale sign too.
Right.
Like, does the voice sound a bit like robotic or like out of sync with the mouth movements?
Right.
These are all clues that you might be looking at a deep fake.
So it's about like training our eyes and our ears
Right.
to like pick up on those like subtle inconsistencies.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's not just about like the technical aspects of the video, right? You also need to be aware of like the psychological tactics
Okay.
that these scammers use.
Like what? Like give me some examples.
Sure. So like a big one is creating a sense of urgency or like scarcity,
Okay.
right? So they'll often say things like, this is a limited time offer or like only a few spots left.
Right.
To like pressure you
Yeah.
into making a quick decision without like thinking it through.
So they're playing on our like fear of missing out, that like classic FOMO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they also love to like dangle the promise of like these unrealistic returns.
Right.
Right. So if someone's like guaranteeing you'll make a ton of money
Yeah.
with like little to no risk,
Yeah.
that's a huge red flag.
Right. It all comes back to like that old saying, like if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
And remember, like legitimate investment opportunities don't require like immediate action.
Right.
Take your time, do your research, and never feel pressure like to hand over your money.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like easy to get like caught up in the hype, especially when you see like these seemingly credible figures.
Yeah.
Like endorsing something.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what these scammers are banking on, right?
Yeah.
They know that we're more likely to trust like someone we perceive as an authority figure,
Right.
even if like we don't know them personally.
Right. So it's not just about being like skeptical of the content itself, right? It's also about like questioning the source and like their motivations.
Exactly. And that's like where critical thinking comes in, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't just take things at face value. Like,
Yeah.
ask questions, do your research, be wary of like anything that seems too good to be true.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to like shift gears for a moment.
Sure.
And talk about like the broader implications of like deep fakes, right? Like it's clear that they pose like a serious threat in the context of like scams.
Right. Yeah.
But like what about their potential impact like on society as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's like something we should all be thinking about, right? Like
Yeah.
as this technology like becomes more advanced and accessible,
Right.
it has the potential to like erode trust in
Yeah.
a way we've like never seen before.
It's like we're entering this new era where like we can't always believe
Right.
what we see or hear.
Yeah.
It really makes you like question the nature of truth.
Right.
And like how we verify information.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's not just about scams, right?
Right,
Like
so-
deepfakes could be used to like spread misinformation, manipulate public opinion, or even incite like violence.
Right.
Right, like imagine a deepfake video of a political leader like declaring war,
Right.
or admitting to a crime.
Oh, wow.
Like the potential for chaos and instability is like enormous.
Yeah, it's a pretty like sobering thought.
Yeah.
So like what can we do about it? Are we just at the mercy of this technology?
Right.
Or are there like ways to fight back?
Well, for starters, I think, we need to raise awareness. Like,
Yeah.
the more people know about deepfakes and, like, how they work, the better equipped they'll be
Right.
to, like, spot them and avoid, falling victim to them.
Education is like definitely key.
Right.
But what about like on a technological level? Like, are there any tools like or techniques
Yeah.
being developed to like detect deepfakes?
Yes, there's a lot of, like, research and development happening in that area. Like,
Yeah.
researchers are working on, like, algorithms that
Yeah.
can analyze videos for, like, these subtle signs of manipulation, like inconsistencies in lighting or shadows or, like, unnatural blinking patterns.
But it's like a digital forensics team, like for videos.
Exactly.
That's really encouraging to hear. But it sounds like we're in like a bit of an arms race here.
Right.
Like as these detection techniques get better,
Yeah.
so too will like the deepfakes themselves, right?
That's true. Yeah. It's like an ongoing battle.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is to like foster a culture of like critical thinking and media literacy.
Yeah. So it's not just about like relying on technology to save us,
Right.
but it's about like empowering ourselves to be like more discerning consumers of information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a challenge we all face like in this digital age.
So all this talk about like deep fakes and scam might be like making some listeners feel a bit like anxious or like overwhelmed.
Right.
What would you say to someone who's like feeling that way?
I would say that like it's important to remember that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more you understand about these scams and the technology behind them,
Right.
the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself.
It's like having like a secret weapon.
Yeah.
Once you like know what to look for, these scams become a lot less intimidating.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Right.
It's about like turning that anxiety into action.
Right. So instead of feeling helpless,
Yeah.
we can like take concrete steps to like protect ourselves and like the people we care about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And remember, like, you're not alone in this.
Right.
Like, there are resources available to help you, like, stay informed and stay safe online.
That's that's really reassuring. So we've talked about the dangers of deepfakes, but before we wrap up, I'd love to like touch on some of their like the potential positive applications of this technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know it might sound like strange, but
Yeah.
are there any ways that like deepfakes could actually be used for good?
That's an interesting question. And the answer is yes. There are like some potential benefits to this technology.
Okay.
For example, deepfakes could be used in like education to create like more engaging and interactive learning experiences.
Right.
Like imagine students, being able to have a virtual conversation with like historical figures, or, like scientists.
Wow, that would definitely like make history class a lot more interesting.
Right. And like in the entertainment industry, deepfakes could be used to create more realistic special effects.
Okay.
Or even like bring deceased actors back to the screen.
Yeah, I've seen some examples of that, and it's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Of course, like there are like ethical considerations to work through.
Right.
But like the possibilities are definitely like intriguing.
Absolutely. It's all about like using this technology, responsibly and ethically.
Right.
And as with like any powerful tool, it's up to us to ensure that it's used for good and not for harm.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Nomani scam and the world of deepfakes, what are like the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
So first and foremost, I think awareness is key.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more you know about these scams and like how they work, the less likely you are to become a victim. Right? So remember to be like skeptical of anything you see online, especially when it comes to like financial investments or like requests for personal information.
It's like that saying, trust but verify.
Right, exactly.
Like don't just take things at face value.
Yeah, and secondly, like don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
If something seems like too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
Right. If you're like unsure about the legitimacy of like a website or an email or a video, reach out to like a trusted source for advice.
And if you do like happen to come across something that like seems suspicious, like don't engage, like just report it, move on.
Exactly. Yeah. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Right.
And finally, like remember that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more we learn about deepfakes and other emerging technologies, the better equipped we'll be to like navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape.
That's a great note to end on. So to all of our listeners out there, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay curious. And remember, you have the power to protect yourself from these scams. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. All right, so we're back and ready to dive deep into this NFL playoff picture.
Yeah, buckle up.
Yeah, as we head into week 18 of the season.
Week 18 already. I can't believe it.
It's crazy how fast this season's flown by. But there's a lot on the line as we head into this last week of the regular season.
Absolutely.
2 playoff spots still up for grabs, and the seeding is still a mystery for a whole handful of teams. Yeah. So a lot to break down. really both conferences are still wide open, and we've got some great analysis from NFL Network and ESPN to kind of guide us through all the chaos.
Yeah, lots of good reporting going on this week to try and get us a picture of what's going to happen.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. Let's start with that AFC playoff picture. And I mean, right off the bat, you see the Chiefs, the Bills, the Texans, those top three spots all locked up. But that final wild card spot, man, that's a real battle.
It is. And it's really interesting, because it's putting a spotlight on two coaches who I think have a lot to prove.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because those two teams, the Dolphins and the Bengals, if we rewind back to the beginning of season,
right?
I mean, these were teams that were
Super Bowl aspirations,
had Super Bowl dreams. Yeah,
exactly.
And now they're fighting just to stay alive.
Just to make the dance. That's it.
Yeah. So let's start with Miami. Mike McDaniel's crew. He just got a contract extension, which is interesting.
Very interesting. A vote of confidence early on, but...
yeah, but another early playoff exit,
It could raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, it could make that decision look a little questionable. Maybe a little too soon for that.
Yeah, they started off so strong, and then they kind of stumbled a bit down the stretch. And so there are definitely some questions swirling about whether McDaniel's offensive scheme, which is very innovative, but maybe not sustainable in the long run. So, if they fall short again, I think you're going to hear those whispers get louder about
his job security for sure.
His job security, exactly.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, you've got Zach Taylor over in Cincinnati. And, I mean, a few years ago, these guys were in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And this season has been a real disappointment.
Oh, a disappointment.
Yeah, even with, this late season surge, they've had some questions about whether Taylor can get this team back to that championship level.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals have been a real head scratcher, I mean, they've had moments of brilliance, but then they just haven't been able to put it all together consistently. Yeah,
and some people point to the offensive line. They haven't been able to protect Burrow.
Right. Not like they did in that Super Bowl run.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the defense maybe hasn't been as dominant as expected. So, probably a combination of factors. But it's definitely putting a lot of pressure on Taylor to show that he can adjust.
Right.
And get this team, back on track.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to compare these two. And McDaniel's got that new contract. So maybe more immediate security.
Yeah.
But maybe higher long-term expectations.
Right.
And then you've got Taylor facing more scrutiny now and needing a strong playoff showing to really silence those doubters.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder, whose absence from the playoffs would be more surprising given those stakes.
I think it's really tough to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dolphins' early success, it raised expectations.
Yeah.
Not meeting them would definitely be a step back for McDaniel.
Right.
But the Bengals, with that recent Super Bowl appearance, I mean, they're dealing with the weight of past success, so failing to even make the playoffs at all would be a huge disappointment. And I think it could lead to some serious soul searching.
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions for sure.
All right. Well, let's shift gears.
Okay.
Let's go over to the NFC where things are just as exciting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Eagles, they've already locked up that top seed, but the rest of the conference is really wide open.
Wide open.
Yeah, all eyes are going to be on the NFC North this weekend. We got a massive showdown between the Vikings and the Lions on Sunday Night Football.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a good one.
And this game is huge, not just for the division title, but for playoff seeding.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lions, they're in control of the division.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Which is surprising, right? They've had a great year.
Right.
But if they lose to the Vikings, they could drop all the way to the 5th seed.
All the way to the 5th seed.
Yeah.
Because if the Commanders win their game,
right,
they would jump ahead of the Lions based on a better record against common opponents, which is the tiebreaker in this scenario. Yeah.
So much riding on one game, and it's even more intense considering these two teams already played a nail-biter earlier this season.
Oh, yeah, I remember that game.
Lions won on a last-second field goal.
Last-second field goal, unbelievable.
Yeah, I hope so.
Talk about a rivalry.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. And, it really just speaks to how competitive the NFC North is this year. I mean, every team has had their moments. The Lions, they've definitely exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
But they've also faced a lot of adversity, especially with injuries, particularly on that offensive line.
Right.
So it's even more impressive that they've been able to stay in the hunt.
Yeah, with everything they've been going through.
Exactly.
And, it's a real underdog story. And I think the big question for them is, can they handle the pressure of these final weeks.
Yeah.
Can they maintain this momentum they've built
Right.
and prove that they're a legitimate contender?
Can they do it when it matters most?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the playoffs are a different animal.
Oh, yeah. The intensity goes way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to be at their best to make a deep run.
For sure.
So to kind of sum it all up, we've got coaching hot seats,
Yeah.
playoff drama, potential upsets brewing in both conferences. I think it's safe to say Week 18 is going to deliver some incredible moments.
Some must-watch TV.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So as we head into the playoffs,
Yeah.
I think the biggest question we have is which team is kind of flying under the radar, ready to make a deep run that no one sees coming?
Yeah. Who's that dark horse?
Exactly. Think about those teams that are maybe overlooked right now,
Yeah.
but have the potential to surprise everyone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what makes the playoffs
Yeah.
so unpredictable
So captivating.
and captivating. Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah.
So for all you fans out there, keep your eyes peeled. There's going to be,
Buckle up.
buckle up.
It's going to be a wild ride.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Enjoy it.
That's right. Enjoy the ride.